I know I'm risking my hide, but by this means, I might save it. So he says, I'm spreading propaganda, I'm fighting against the war effort, I'm risking my life because this is illegal, but I might save my life. Where in this analysis do we find a consideration that his country's been attacked and he wants to defend his country? Nowhere. Nowhere. He wants to save his life. He doesn't feel anything for the regime, which is throwing away his comrades' lives needlessly. And how do you think the Iranian people feel today about their regime? Where when they march on the streets and say we didn't vote for this guy, they get shot. Continuing this letter he writes to his sweetheart, he says, "My darling, say this with me, quote, 'Down with the war that separates us, and long live the revolution, which by bringing peace will reunite us. I love you, and I don't want to die.'" That's touching. He doesn't want to die. He loves her. He wants peace. What kind of peace, I wonder, are they going to get with a revolution if they allow the Germans to just march into France and own it, which is what would happen if the French surrendered to the Germans and quit fighting. But there you have it. He does not support the French government just because his government was attacked. No, he's got a little bit more brains than that. And those of you out there who say by attacking Iran we would make everybody a fan of the Iranian regime are spitting on and insulting Iranians who are a little more intelligent than that. They know that just because their government has brought massive war on itself doesn't mean they should support their government. They're a little smarter than that, and you insult them and degrade them if you say that they would support their government in a war. Now, when a regiment, the 370th, was called to battle, was ordered to go to the front during this Nivelle offensive, the soldiers spilled into the streets in the village they were quartered in and started screaming with rage, firing rifles into the air, and singing the Nationale. Now, I don't know what the Nationale is, a French Revolution song or something like that. Towards morning, they formed columns and marched towards the woods. Now, that's a fairly significant statement there. The woods, or the area where fighting isn't going on, the area between the trenches, German trenches and the Allied trenches, was called no man's land, and it did not have trees or woods anymore. And in fact, behind the trenches for some ways, there was bombardment, constant bombardment. So to go into the woods means to be heading away from, leaving the front lines. And they did this. They had shot their commanding officer, poured into the streets, singing Nationale. The next day they march off into the woods. By June 1917, half of the French army was affected by this. Men refused to return to the trenches. Quote from a soldier, "The slightest German attack would have been enough to topple down our house of cards and bring the enemy to Paris." So this was a massive, massive intelligence failure on the part of the Germans. 4 days later, the troops gave themselves up. They got better leave, more rest, and improved medical conditions as a result of the strike. It was sort of a mutiny, but the fact that they gave up in a few days, it looks more like a strike, and the fact they wanted better treatment and so on, and got some. Now, there is an excellent video which I was alerted to by Lisa Van Dam, and it's called Paths of Glory, or Paths to Glory. It's a black and white film, and you should get that if you're interested in seeing a video about this subject, about the French Rebellion and stuff. Turns out that they executed 49 Frenchmen who were blamed as being the instigators or the starters or the problem makers or troublemakers. And one of them was so badly wounded he had to be shot sitting down. He was wounded in the eruption of hostilities of the strike. In the movie, they tie him to a stretcher and have him standing up, but he's sort of like this, and they shoot and kill him, and it's not funny. Alright, now in video number 8 of 10, starting at 18 minutes and 50 seconds, the Italian mutiny, surrender is talked about. The Italians didn't openly refuse to fight. It was a little bit different than the British saying, "Why should I shoot at people?" and the French saying, "We're not going to go to the front lines." What the Italians did was they began surrendering to the Germans in massive numbers, just whole groups of them. A soldier says, quote, "When the Germans finally took us all prisoner, we were happy because we had saved our lives. Farewell, Italy. Farewell, family. I am now in the hands of the Germans." End quote. His country, having been attacked by the Germans, actually not, Italy was sort of holding back, waiting to see which way to go, and its government went with the side that offered them more, which put them on the side of the Allies. But if patriotism brings people to support their government in wartime, which is what people are trying to say about Iran, then this guy wouldn't say things like, "Farewell Italy, farewell family, I just want to survive, at least I'm alive." Things do matter to people more than their country. Sometimes a person's country is not the almighty important thing in their value hierarchy. Sometimes it's their freedom or their life. Erwin Rommel, you may know this name, a young German lieutenant, said, quote, "Their soldiers threw away their weapons and hurried to me. In an instant I was surrounded and hoisted onto Italian shoulders. E viva Germania sounded from 1,000 throats." Erwin Rommel, I think, was later the one in North Africa who was the desert fox or whatever. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. By attacking a country and going to war against them, you do not automatically make patriot warriors out of all of its citizens. Russia, France, Italy, Britain, and Germany all had instances of this sort of, to hell with it, we're not going to fight, we'll surrender, we want to get along, we don't want the trouble. American soldiers were known when they got to Europe for being, number one, green, meaning they had no combat experience, and number two, very gung-ho. And the American soldiers, it was said, just wanted to go fight. They just wanted to get on the battlefield and shoot people, and it took a while, a little bit of that happening for them to sort of get a better way about them. But the American soldiers didn't have the 3 years before that of seeing thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of soldiers being thrown away for 20 or 30 yards of territory. So if we attack Iran, I think we can expect something similar in the behavior of the Iranians to when we attacked Germany in World War I. And I don't think that they're going to support a regime they hate and despise just because that regime brings war on the country. That would, in fact, it seems to me, be more of a reason to hate and despise their country and their regime. I think we would see sabotage and internal treachery rather than patriotism and supporting a regime that it's clear they hate very badly. So, with that as evidence, I say we should take back the oil that the Iranians nationalized in the 1950s. We should do it damn soon.